Uh, Speaking of children we love, I was working with a child recently in the temple where I work. And we were working in a room where there are a bunch of statues and another beautiful painting of Master Bodhidharma. And this little boy, he's the son of the abbot of the temple, and he was sort of we always play together. He comes and he's like, "Oh, Eshin, I want to help. Is there anything I can help with?" And I'm like, "You're 7. You can't help with anything." And he's like, "But I wanna help." I'm like, "All right, well then play. Tell me a story." He's like, "I don't want to tell you a story." I'm like, "Well then I'm gonna tell you a story." And I said, "Do you know who this is?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's Dharma." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's Dharma. Do you know anything about him?" He's like, "No." It's like, "Well, you're gonna learn, kid." And so I told him some of the stories which we all already have discussed, and I've talked about in a couple of my little YouTube videos. And there was one more moment in Daruma's story which I had a wonderful insight as I was explaining this in a way that a 7-year-old could understand. So, if we all remember, I know that Steve and Greg remember well, uh, when Bodhidharma traveled to China, one of the early important moments in his arrival, after his arrival, was meeting Emperor Wu of the Northern Kingdom, if I remember correctly, the north of the Yangtze River in China. And in that meeting, he famously, Emperor Wu was like, "Oh, look at me! I built all this stuff. I did all this great stuff. What merit have I earned for my generosity, for my beneficence?" And Bodhidharma famously said, "No merit," probably in broken Japanese or broken Chinese, because that makes it funnier, at least in my imagination. Uh, and then, being quite offended, Emperor Wu goes, "Who is it that thus stands before me?" And Bodhidharma looks at him and says, "I have no idea." And then Wu is just like, "No one ever does this. No one ever talks this way to me." And then Bodhidharma turns, probably completely indifferent to the failure of that interaction, and leaves uh, unceremoniously, is what I like to imagine. And then there's a step in the story where, which we didn't discuss before, which is that as Bodhidharma walked away, left Wu's palace, he had to cross back into the southern part of China, which means he had to cross the Yangtze River. And where he came to the river, there was no bridge. And if you don't know anything about geography, the Yangtze River is the deepest river in the world, which means it's certainly one of the largest rivers in the world. I think it's third. I think it's the third largest river. It's like the Nile is the longest, the Amazon's the widest, and the Yangtze is the deepest, and also a big, wide, crazy river. But so please keep that magnitude in mind. And so Bodhidharma, there being no bridge, on the bank of the river finds some like a reed, like, could be like a bamboo type of reed called a, in Japanese we call it sasa, and he plucks one stalk, and it's pretty lightweight. It's like grassy wood stuff. It floats. He puts it on the water, and then he steps on it, and on that he crosses the Yangtze River. I like Chelsea's face. She's sending a great message. What? Why could Bodhidharma cross the Yangtze River on a single, well, effectively, a single blade of grass? This, this is actually one of the meatiest parts of Bodhidharma's story, and I think that a lot of people miss it. I think that it's missed. One of the most profound teachings in Zen is in Bodhidharma crossing the Yangtze River on a blade of grass. I made a fun YouTube video, and I hope that the people who watch these long discussion Zen meat videos, I think they'll catch this at some point. Or if they use the little AI button and then they read the summary, which is really cool. I highly recommend it. It's pretty interesting. But the casual viewer, this is more than a minute and a half in or so, so they probably won't get to this part of the story. So I don't expect them to get the easy answer, which I'm going to give you in short order. I'm having fun with this problem. So, with that story in mind and wondering why Bodhidharma could do it, obviously, let's first dispel it's not a miracle. It's scientifically impossible, right? Of course. It's not about, you know, realistically, either he didn't cross the river or there was somebody there with a boat. Surely. But the the mythology is pointing us at something really important. And that's why the story exists as it does. And there are also lots of other stories of uh, other Zen masters, particularly Zen masters, but not exclusively, doing similarly miraculous things. And a lot of people maybe encounter those stories in a way that's sort of literal and maybe scratch their heads like, what? Or why is there this kind of talk? Why is this master crossing a river on a leaf? Like, eh? This is not unlike Jesus turning water into wine for his group of friends gathering. It's not unlike that. I think the water into the wine is more like the monk who climbed down the vine and realized that although he's about to die, there are always sweet grapes nearby, and he eats the grapes. I think that the wine's more close to the grapes, not because wine is made from grapes, but situationally. But uh, the point is not literal, and that's what makes it so poignant and easy to miss. But once you get it, it's difficult to forget, and that's what these miracle esque story parts can do for us in a practical sense. So on the discussion of hitting and being hit, what is masculine and what is feminine, to discuss that at least as one blind person grasping at an elephant, not knowing what the full picture is. Let's just work with the one corner of the elephant that we have. And that is at the mere idea of being struck, we experience on an individual level a reaction, right? You have a reaction. And I think a little boy, I'm going to start with a little boy because, well, I started as a little boy. So I think little boys are funny. They like fart jokes and doing silly, maybe slightly dangerous things. And sometimes beating each other up with sticks is kind of fun. So at first, the little boy inside me goes, hey, 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 you know. But there's also the part where like, actually that hurts. I don't want to be hit. Why am I going to be hit? That's not cool. And then also we have this whole strong cultural identity that has emerged over the last 100 years or so, where we don't hit. We agree that hitting is bad objectively. It's not good to strike a child. It's not good. We can imagine, like Steve, thank you for your point about the Buddha asking the guy about, if your son puts a piece of like a stick in his mouth or something, well, what are you going to do? You're going to stick your fingers in there and you're going to pull it out, whether the little boy is happy about that or not, because you love him. You're going to save him. But going back to this reaction that we experience is what? What is that reaction?
The reaction to being hit? Is that what you're asking?
Yes. And sometimes even just talking about it, you're also having a reaction. No?
It's like a protective thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Feeling
What
of
are you?
safety.
Yeah, feeling of safety. What are you protecting, Chelsea?
Your identity, yourself.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's resistance to some action.
Yeah, yeah. Self protection. Now, if somebody comes at you with a sword, or like a, we'll say, an uncompassionate looking stick, yeah, we have a very natural physiological reaction to protect ourselves, right?
Mhm.
Well, the question is, what is that? What is that thing that we're trying to protect, really? What happens? Um, what happens if you just don't?
Well, that's the thing we don't want to find out, right? Like that's why you're. Uh, who knows what happens? And
Yeah.
mhm.
Mm. Goodbye, Chriselle. I'll just say it in person. Yeah. Let me get back on. I got a little distracted by Chriselle leaving. Mm. There is, in the realm of the absolute, we we might find ourselves having a very difficult time, and I say ourselves as a the only person who can deal with the suffering that we experience in our lives is us. No one else can come and save us. When we die alone. When you close your eyes, the only thing there is you, your thoughts, whatever's left in your life, your reflections. Maybe you're holding a hand, but eventually your cognition of the feeling, even that will fade away because that's impermanent. And at the point that we die, all of those systems are beginning to turn off. It's just me there. What is a self is only all the way back to the very first Zen meet, is defined by uh, what we encounter through our five senses and the way that we cognise, the way we sort of organize those senses. We have our smell. Come on, somebody, help me list these.
Sight,
Taste,
Sight.
touch,
hearing,
Greg,
hearing,
hearing. Chelsea,
touch.
touch. Steve,
Uh,
hint.
yeah, but most like I like more describe self as five skandhas.
Yes, exactly, exactly. The five skandhas. What's this one?
Yeah, it's a test.
Taste, taste. Yeah.
Yes.
Uh, Go, Steve. What? Tell me. Go in there. Go in there with the five skandhas. What do you got? How does that define self for you? Putting you on the
It's
spot.
actually a combination when we see it's eye conscious and see some form
Mm-hmm.
and we produce something like dislike.
Mm-hmm.
It's number three, and we react on this stuff and we create this face image.
Mm-hmm. So, by our senses, we we sort, or we create a form.
Yes.
We identify patterns in the world. Hang with me, Chelsea. I know this is tough Buddhist psychology right here. So uh, we experience a form, and we begin to see a repeating pattern in our life. Oh, this pattern happens again and again. Oh, this is a tiger. Ah, I see this form again. We've come up with a name. This is a tiger. And we see this form again. Oh, this is a tree. This has a certain behaviors. It reacts in certain ways in certain conditions. I know that this is a tree because of its repeating pattern in my experience. And then we sort those experiences into three categories: positive, negative, and neutral. Most of the neutral we throw away. We just don't even bother to think about it. You go for a walk, you don't think about too much all of the fallen leaves on the floor. You don't remember on the floor, on the ground. You don't see all of the shapes and all of the colors and all of the ways that the leaves have curled and landed or nested themselves by the force of the wind in the cracks of rocks and stuff. We don't remember all those details. It's neutral. But as we walk through the forest, we see a pattern that looks like a snake. We have a name for that slithery thing with sharp teeth and a bad attitude. We call it a snake. We remember, oh, I saw a snake on my walk. That was scary. It's a negative experience. It's easy to remember. And we see beautiful flowers. What's a good example? Flowers that bloom in the fall. Well, in Japan, we have camellias. They bloom in the spring and the fall. Tea also blooms in the fall. Little beautiful little tiny white flowers are quite fragrant. Osmanthus, I don't know where else in the world that grows. That's another fall blooming flower. But in the fall, you can see some blooming flowers. And you see those, you remember them. It's a beautiful, oh, this is the season for this. It smells great. It's more pleasant than a snake, so it's a positive thing. Unless you love snakes, in which the snake can also become a positive experience too. But we sort, and we remember positive and negative things. And in ourselves, well, in this corporeal thing, we have personality, and we have tendencies to like and dislike things, and to have favorable interactions with certain people, these people and not these people kind of things. And at all of those intersections, this set of sensory organs and thought secreting organ bumps into all of the phenomena in our lives. It's at all of those intersections where we define me. Does this make sense? It's actually not all that complicated at the end of it, right? So what exactly is you? If you took away all those things, all of the phenomena in your life, what's you? Take away all your dislikes and likes. Take away your encounter with every phenomena and all the patterns that you've seen and observed and the way you interact with all those things. You take all that away, what's left? What of you is there?
Just a sack of matter.
Yeah, at best. Sack of matter. So what, in that sense, what could be hurt? If we understand that there is a kind of an emptiness about even our idea of ourself, because ourself is only defined at the edges of everything else. What use is there to protect it? Can it really be hurt? What's that, Steve? What do you got?
Yes, we can be hurt because we have a couple different stuff.
Yeah.
Physically, you're able to be hurt because you
Mhm.
have bodily sensation, and of course, but it's physical pain. Also, you create another four pains on the top of this physical pain.
Yeah. Well, especially if you see the non-compassionate stick coming at you, then you have anticipation, fear.
Yep.
And that's a pain. That's its own kind of pain. And I mean this not in the physical sense. I mean this in a sort of metaphorical way. So the
Metaphorical way, yes, we empty, but because we empty, we able to get all things come together and create something and pass away. Come and create and pass away. It's actually probably what we are. Probably. Can be wrong.
Yeah. I agree. There's no real end. The ultimate conundrum to this discussion is that trying to define self is like trying to pin down smoke. It's there, and yet there's nothing really there. Like, oh, you can see the smoke, but you can't actually touch it. It lingers. There might be a smell. I was burning incense, so everything in my room now smells a bit like somewhat good smelling smoke, and but I can't really touch it. In our practice, when we practice orienting ourselves to stillness and silence, we take a break from the measuring and comparing that we do, which creates the result of, oh, I am this kind of person, or I have this kind of feeling or reaction to this sort of thing. We take a break for a very short time from doing that. And then that tiny space we can access no self, an emptiness of self, an emptiness of positive and negative reactions, which means an emptiness, freedom from fear in a certain way. And if a person gets really ambitious in a certain way, they meet a teacher and they say, hey, can I become a monk? Would you please ordain me? And then you can go and or you meet the Buddha and you say, hey, please, I would like to practice with you every day. I would like to go straight to the bottom of this and give my whole life up for this, to drop away all of this in order to enter this principle. And that's one way. But then there are most humans which don't do that. But that doesn't mean that the Buddha way is in any way more or less accessible, depending on your circumstances. If you have a home, you have a family, you have you give yourself to your obligations in society, that's okay. If we have the chance to hear the Buddha's teachings about how we perceive our world and how we suffer, what that suffering is a result of, and how we might see through it, then we can take up our everyday mundane life. I mean, non-monastic, non-intentionally pedagogically designed suffering forced upon us somewhat. We do consent to doing the thing, but while we're in it, it becomes so dense. We're like, no, this sucks. I don't want to do this anymore. That's a monk. But for most of our lives, we're just regular, everyday, living in the world, paying our taxes and all this stuff. The suffering just comes to us. If we don't do something to adjust how we regard all of those aspects of discomfort, unsatisfactoriness, fear, anger, self-protection in our everyday lives, then we just keep getting tumbled over and over and over and over by crap. There's a Hindu concept called samsara, which kind of applies to reincarnation, where you suffer in this life and then you have desires and then it causes you to be reborn again, and maybe like you drop down a level and you become an animal or whatever in the next lifetime. Well, no. Let's just put the whole reincarnation thing aside. Samsara, the constant rebirth in suffering, in a practical sense, apart from what we can't verify, whether hereafter or here before, I mean, in terms of like past and previous lives or whatever, that samsara is our everyday experience. If we don't see the crap that we have to deal with right here in front of us as, this is an opportunity to notice this self, or all the components, the 5 skandhas with which I define myself functioning. If I don't take that up as a little bit of a study, then I'm blindly submitting. I'm sort of consenting to being tumbled around and just pushed around from one discomfort to the next. And then I might try to protect myself because it sucks. In ever more subtle ways. Because obviously, if you're being abused, you have to fight back against that. If you're watching your neighbors be taken away by secret police, you defend them. That's what compassion manifests in that activity too. So do that. Do the right thing at the right time. That's not what I'm saying here. But on an individual level, like, I'm experiencing an unfavorable circumstance, something that's a pain in the butt, and I'm going to watch. I'm not going to let this bowl me over again. But how do I not let this rule me? How do I not get chewed up by? How do I not feel how do I not feel traumatized in a way that and I mean that if you experience the same, even small unfavorable circumstances repeatedly, then you create an anticipation, because you see the circumstances coming together and you're like, I'm going to have this problem again. And then you're like, oh God, this problem again. This sucks. I don't want to do this again. It becomes its own kind of micro trauma. But there's a way to be free of that. And in here, to pull back to what is the meaning of Bodhidharma crossing the Yangtze River on a single blade of grass, therein lies the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see what I did there? Yeah. Steve and Greg have a chance at getting this, I think. Chelsea, I'm much more interested at what you're getting out of this. How's this bouncing around inside you?
You ask these questions and I think, I don't know, am I not getting it? But I appreciate the sentiment of like, yes, you interject, you sort of break the pattern by sitting, observing, studying yourself, and then I don't know, it's like a reclamation of power in a way. How that ties back to crossing a river on a blade of grass, I don't know, but
this is the beauty of koan, the understanding. So dharma is a word that comes up a lot in Buddhism. It comes up in yoga and Hinduism too. But dharma in Zen is seeing deeply into nature and understanding our existence. We call that the Buddha's teaching. But the Buddha didn't see Buddha's teaching. The Buddha saw nature and understood our existence. So maybe it's more practical to just call it what it is. Something that precedes Buddha. Something beyond Buddha. And for those of us who are stupid, that's me. Nice to meet you. Welcome to the club, stupids. It's nice to have someone like a Buddha, a teacher, point us at the thing so that our stupidness can go, oh, so that's what it means. Before I give you the answer, Greg, Steve,
I'd like to give it a shot.
Okay, give it a shot.
I
really...
don't know. I'm this is like my guess. I'm piecing together. I think the whole river is like a metaphor for like the spiritual path. I think the Buddha uses that in some of his teachings of like crossing to the other side. And so with that framework, I'm kind of thinking that the riding the blade of grass is like the way to get to the other side, or like to like the path to enlightenment, is like every single moment, and that's like the single blade of grass.
I mean, it's close. It's close. It's way simpler than that. This is why. Well, Steve, you got anything? Do you have anything?
I have two variations of this story.
Okay, go. I'm very curious.
Okay, first, yes, he probably crossed the river on little grass because he not grasps anything. He stopped resist to the world, and world stopped to resist to the Bodhidharma, and he able to cross the river even on small things. But with all this teaching what you provide, I think it's a little different. I think who's across the river, if he ever crossed the river, who is Bodhidharma? In this case, it's who crossed the river, if he crossed the river.
There's another koan that happens after Bodhidharma crosses the river, which touches on the second part of your point there, which we'll get to another time. But here you go, everyone. Let me just give this to you like I gave it to the 7-year-old kid. He goes, "How could Bodhidharma cross a river on a sasa, on a little reed? You know, maybe one leaf stuck on that reed." Well, Bodhidharma, if we put him in context, he was going from here to there. Where he came from was an unsatisfactory situation. His interaction with Emperor Wu was, well, it doesn't sound all that productive. It doesn't sound like a fruitful experience, right? Who are you? I have no idea. I thought he was already a master, so wouldn't he know? That actually not knowing is knowing. That's one. Two, if you're worried about getting wet, you can't cross a river. If you're carrying anything, you're entirely too heavy to ride on a blade of grass that floats on water. So what in Bodhidharma is so lightweight that the buoyancy of a blade of grass can even hold it?
He's not holding on to anything, or not carrying anything with him.
He's not carrying anything. From one moment to the next, nothing is carried. Nothing is left behind. But left behind means here. If you put it all down, you find yourself incredibly light. And thus, you can cross a river on a single blade of grass. Stupidly simple, right? The river is just a river. The blade of grass is just a blade of grass. You can't. You can read all the fun metaphors and all those other things. Crossing to the other side, that's a cool example. But how can you cross to the other side if you're concerned, if you're afraid of getting wet? Well, one, it's like, getting wet's not that big of a deal. But what if the river's really strong? You might get swept away. If you're worried about being swept away, you will be swept away. Bodhidharma probably crossed in a straight line. Physically impossible. Much less on a single blade of grass.
Very nice.
Yeah. So the lesson here is we ultimately, as human beings, don't need to create any extra suffering in our lives. And that said, it's when we realize that we are probably doing the same thing over and over, like banging our heads into the sidewalk or something like some metaphor like that. Just doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, but that's not happening in our lives. Then at that point, we become a little bit more self-aware. We ask a question. And then when we ask that question, we have an opportunity to encounter some dharma, to look at nature and understand our existence, or to hear the teaching of a teacher or get pointed at it by the Buddha, in a sense. And when we do that, sometimes we hear things we don't like. In fact, maybe a lot of it, especially the parts that adjust our understanding and our regard in a productive and healthy sort of medicinal healing way, are uncomfortable and difficult to encounter. Because we even just hearing a certain kind of truth, like the truth of our fundamental emptiness, non-self, is uncomfortable. It's scary. It's not conventional thinking. It's unusual. And in that way, when we enter this realm of, there is no self. But me, I'm here. This feels uncomfortable. That encountering is its own kind of suffering, although we're there listening to a teacher. And this is also an older another koan that I mentioned a while ago, in the father who was a doctor who cured his delirious children, doing something compassionately, lying to them, but cannot be charged with falsehood because he tricked them into taking the medicine to save their own lives. Of course, they were angry at him afterwards when they realized that he didn't actually die. He faked his death, but in that way, his children were able to live. That encountering the truth, getting adjusted by our own sort of masculine, I'm gonna do it power, or our own self-love, our own motherly power, which I hope that we all have, man or woman or other, that practice, that training in our own everyday normal human waking life is uncomfortable. But that taking it up and knowing that, trusting that somewhere on the other side of understanding the thing is something lighter. Bodhidharma in this koan, in this moment in the Bodhidharma story, teaches us that although we think that it's on the other side that we get lighter, that we get free, actually freedom is here. We can't get to the other side unless we become free now. That's also in this story. And that's where I'm going to leave it. Any questions?
So if he become freedom over there, not on another side, it means he not cross the river.
Well, that's a good question. So I'll give a hint for the later one. Maybe I get a good idea out of it. I'm not sure yet. But so after Bodhidharma crossed the river, somewhere along his journey away from the palace of Emperor Wu, one of the court officials who had heard lots of stories of Bodhidharma realized that he saw Bodhidharma, but he didn't recognize him. And he kind of felt some dissatisfaction. I didn't say hello to Bodhidharma. I know all about him, but I didn't recognize him. I've never seen him in person. And one of that person's servants heard him anguishing over having not greeted Bodhidharma and says, well, why don't you send for him? I can go get him for you. And that official turns and says to his servant and goes, it wouldn't matter if I sent the entire army after him, because Bodhidharma cannot be brought or carried. There's another lesson somewhere in there too. Yeah. Anyway, whether or not he was real or 1,500 years ago, for a person, or maybe it was a group of people, who knows, to have such an enigmatic effect and to leave such profound lessons through their zany life, improbable, impossible. None of it was physically real. I mean, come on, let's be real here. But the enigma is what points us at the truth of our lives, and that's why I love Bodhidharma so much. I maybe like him more than Master Dogen, but don't tell the rest of these Soto Zen monks. So, no questions? Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Arigato gozaimasu.
どういたしまして。